Albert Einstein said that creativity is intelligence having fun. And now, if we use that definition as our starter today, the idea of inviting a nonprofit to stand on a stage and talk about creativity is a bit odd, especially following the brilliance of Pixar on this stage. But the reality is most people believe that nonprofits are strong in mission and weak in message. So to put another way, people believe that nonprofits, while well-intentioned and often doing good work, are just simply boring. And I can't really argue against that point other than to say it doesn't have to be that way. Charity Water from day one put creativity at the center of its DNA. And it's not hyperbole to say that creativity is the driving factor that took Charity Water from being a mere idea in the mind of a New York City nightclub promoter to America's largest water charity in 20 years. So the story of Charity Water is the story of creativity. So today, using Charity Water, my name is Brian, and using Charity Water as the backdrop, I want to challenge us and remind us of the power of creativity. Your creativity, our creativity, what it does in culture. May it not be something that we add on to our lives, but may it be something that we lead with. Your creativity is important. So as we spend time together, I'm going to teach you a little bit about Charity Water, and I want to introduce you to start with to Scott Harrison and the story of Charity Water.
So I'd picked up every vice that you might imagine would come with a decade in nightlife. Everything short of heroin I was doing at this point. And I was just rotting inside.
I decided in one fell swoop to kind of never smoke again, to never touch drugs again, to never gamble again. I needed to walk so far in the other direction.
But I started to spend more and more time out in the rural villages. And as I would travel around these villages, I would see the most shocking things.
This is the water she used for drinking, for bathing, for cleaning her clothes.
It wasn't okay. Kids shouldn't be drinking from scummy swamps or ponds or rivers.
Mission was going to be to work for the rest of my life to end the water crisis, to bring clean water to every single person on the planet.
Lives all around the world were being changed. The kids I saw sitting in the mud with the pigs, drinking swamp water, we're now drinking clean water from wells.
We believe now more than ever, water changes everything. It is one of the most transformative things on planet Earth.
Our focus for the next few minutes is to see how creativity, when you wrap it especially with beauty and innovation, can be world-changing forces. But let me ground you in a little bit of what we're fighting for every single day. Currently, 696 million people around the world lack basic access to clean water. That's 1 out of every 10 human beings on the planet. We believe at Charity Water that when you give them clean water, water changes everything. It's education and income and dignity and health, especially for women and children who are the most vulnerable in this crisis. When you have clean water, kids are more likely to go to school. When you invest $1 in clean water in a community, the economic output is $4 or more for that community. Clean water has the ability to prevent 16,000 deaths every single week. 200 million hours are spent every day walking for dirty water, mostly by women and girls around the world. So when you solve the water crisis, you solve the time crisis. And women are now able to go to school and start businesses and spend time with friends and family. An investment in clean water is an investment in humanity. We're on a mission to bring clean water to every person on the planet. What have we done so far? So in our 20 years, we've raised more than $1 billion, implemented 209,000 water projects in 29 countries, currently serving 21 million people around the world. And so all of that is important work. But what we believe is that to lead that work and to move that forward, we needed to focus on creativity and beauty and innovation to do that. And so as you're doing your work, whatever that is, it is somewhat of that same idea. So let me start with beauty. At Charity Water, the idea is that every single time we put something into the world, we want it to represent the beauty and dignity, the dreams, the hopes of every person that we represent around the world. We lead with beauty. We want you to see in their eyes what they hope to become. We want you to remember that these are real human beings in the world that have dreams, that have children, that have lives, that have hope. And we do that anytime we put forth something. So beauty for us is the leading indicator of how we want to engage people in the world with our crisis. And when we do all of that, this can be the example. So it is imperative for us, as we lead towards something important like clean water, that we do so with beauty and with dignity and hope. Next, creativity. What does it look like to apply creativity to what we do around the world? When we became a nonprofit in 2006, we didn't want to just be another charity. We wanted to reinvent how a charity operates. And so that means you needed to think creatively and act creatively in this space. And so for us, we created 3 core pillars that were pretty unique to the idea of being a charity. The first is the 100% model, because creativity is often just looking at an old problem with a new lens. And so one of the problems is how people donate to charities. So the 100% model basically says, for every dollar you donate to us to provide clean water, 100% of that dollar goes to clean water. No overhead, no administrative costs. You don't have to figure out where your money's going or how much of your money's going somewhere, 100%. Now, if you are familiar at all with philanthropic giving, you will understand that that is a radically different way to do philanthropic giving, that 100% of your money goes to exactly what we operate around. The next is that we would show you where your money went. We have GPS coordinates on all 209,000 water projects around the world so that you know everywhere that we have placed a water project, and we will show you exactly where your money was spent around the world. The third is we wanted to have a world-class brand. So from day one, we realized to engage people and wake them up to the idea of the water crisis, that our brand needed to be something that made people sit up and listen and come back. Now, the reality for nonprofits, so if any of you work in nonprofits or education or important worlds, you would hope that your cause would be strong enough that you could just throw it out there and people would respond. They don't. And so having a brand that engaged people is key to solving the world's water crisis. And so for us, we were reminded by one of our friends at the New York Times who was an early supporter of Charity Water, and he told us very early on, any brand of toothpaste is peddled with far more sophistication than the life-saving work of aid groups. Think about that for a second. Toothpaste has a better brand and better marketing and is more creative than people who are literally trying to save the world. So for us, being creative in our brand was key. It was also important to start thinking about how we did operate differently. How would we fundraise differently? How would we do ad campaigns differently? So I want to give you a few examples from our history to give you some primer on how we looked at creativity and what we created. So fundraising. How would you fundraise differently? Everybody does donor banquets or events. What would it look like that was a little bit different for us? So take a look at our 2018 donor event that we held in San Francisco.
This year's vision was a little different.
Welcome, folks. Thank you. Have a great evening.
So look at this, right?
No, I know.
When Eberhard made her walk this morning, she actually knew that you guys were going to be here. So our team told her, we said, look, we're going to just share your story, and we know that people are going to be moved. We know that people are going to want to help. This is all why we've named tonight the gift of time. I am going to give every one of you right now the opportunity to buy a brand new drilling team in Ethiopia. We're going to add to the fleet. You are now all proud owners of a drilling rig in Ethiopia with the name of hopefully a loved one on it. I'm going to ask you to buy time, drilling time, for your rig. We're going to start with hours, and then we're going to move on to days. We'll move on to weeks. Hopefully all of this time combined will add up into years. There we go. All right, we got a year done. All right. We're into 2020. Amazing, guys. Wow. Norm's going to help me get there.
Where are all the entrepreneurs in the room?
Let's raise a glass to each other, to the generosity in this room.
So we knew we needed to fundraise differently. I always kind of breathe a little heavily when I watch that and I hear him say we're now into 2020, not having any idea what we were about to do. But fundraising differently. So what about ad campaigns? Like, how do we apply creativity and different ways of thinking to ad campaigns? Now, water, clean water, and the idea of people not having it is a pretty heavy subject. So we decided we could look at ad campaigns a few different ways. So let's try looking at our most recent ad campaign through the lens of humor. Check this out. All right, so humor. Okay, what about being a little more provocative around the idea of people that need clean water? Check this one. Tad bit different, huh? So the idea, though, is how do we get people's attention, get them coming back, engaging them with a real problem? So beauty, and then creativity, and then finally, I want us to land here for the last few minutes on innovation. Innovation is really just simply taking creative ideas and putting them into practical practice on how we operate. Let me give you a quick caveat on innovation, though. So when I give you a couple of examples in a moment on innovation, you might think those aren't innovative at all. So let me give you an example in culture. If I asked how many in this space or how many in this entire day are walking around with a cordless phone, I feel pretty confident that it's almost every single person that you'll come in contact with today, right? We all have cordless phones. Now, if you were a teenager in the 1980s, you will realize what a mind-blowing idea the cordless phone truly was. So, as a teenager in the 1980s, we had to take our phones that were plugged in our kitchens or our family rooms, and if we wanted a private conversation, we had to pull those into a bathroom or a bedroom in hopes that the prying ears of our parents couldn't find us if we wanted to talk to our middle school girlfriend, right? Any 1980s teenagers that can attest to this? Thank you. Okay, so when the cordless phone showed up in the mid-1980s and you could go anywhere in your house to talk to your middle school girlfriend, your life had just literally changed in a moment. So today, a cordless phone, not innovative. 1985, life-changing. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples from Charity Water's history that won't sound innovative today, but that truly changed the way nonprofits worked 20 years ago. The way we used social media is one. So Charity Water from day one decided social media would be a driver of how we operated. We were the very first nonprofit to show up on Instagram, the very first one. We used Twitter in a way that no other nonprofit was. In fact, we took one of those drilling rigs that goes in and drills water around the world. We gave it its own Twitter account, and then we had that drilling rig tweet anytime it was doing work around the world. So it would start drilling, it would tweet what it was doing. It would twit-pick back. Anybody remember twit-pick? It would twit-pick back a picture. Like, it literally had its own set of followers creating its own brand around this one idea. That was completely innovative when you start looking at 2006, 2007, 2008. Peer-to-peer fundraising was one of the greatest things we ever put forth into the nonprofit space. Now, peer-to-peer fundraising today, very common. GoFundMe rules the world when it comes to this. We started peer-to-peer fundraising, built our own fundraising page for peer-to-peer on our site back in 2006. GoFundMe didn't exist until 2010. We started with thinking outside of the ways that nonprofits work. And so I would say, just as a pause, for you, whatever you're doing, start thinking outside of the space that everybody else is working. How can you move forward in what you're doing? Education, nonprofit, whatever work you're doing, how can you move forward beyond what everybody else is doing? So for peer-to-peer, give you a quick example of how effective this was. So for the first 10 years of Charity Water, we raised $250 million without spending one penny on paid advertising. So think about that for a second. $250 million without any money going into marketing because we looked at ways that nobody else was doing and took advantage of those. So one of the ways we did this was through this idea of birthday campaigns. Charity Water started on Scott Harrison's 31st birthday, and what he knew how to do is throw a party in a club. And so he threw a 31st birthday in a nightclub in Manhattan, asked all of his friends to drop money in the bucket on the way in, and they partied that night for his 31st birthday for the first $15,000 that were ever raised by Charity Water. That is how we started our peer-to-peer fundraising campaign. Then we had this whole campaign about give up your birthday. And so we had moms and dads and regular folks and kids and grandparents all jump in. We had celebrities that said, I'll give up my birthday. Justin Bieber gave up his 17th and 19th birthday for Charity Water. Nathan Fillion, the actor, gave up his 40th birthday and raised $400,000 for clean water. People all over the planet just started doing this give up your birthday campaign. This kid, Max, gave up his 7th birthday and raised $22,000. This guy, Tony Hawk, did the same on his 44th birthday, raised less than Max, but still raised a good amount for clean water. So then people stopped and said, what else can I do? And so I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro and raise money on this site. I'm going to jump out of a plane and do that. I'm going to give up my wedding ring and raise money instead. This guy, magazine writer in Florida, said to his readers, what's the craziest thing I can do to raise money for clean water? And they said, the craziest thing you can do is listen to this Nickelback album on repeat for 7 consecutive days. That's 168 consecutive hours. Awake, asleep, showering, working, whatever you're doing, Nickelback is on. So he did it, put it on our peer-to-peer site, and raised painful $36,000 for clean water. But people latched onto this and started raising money. Rachel Beckwith in the Pacific Northwest, for her 9th birthday, created a goal for $300. And by the time she got to her 9th birthday, she had raised $220 and told her mother, I'm going to try harder next year. A few weeks after her 9th birthday, Rachel was killed in a tragic car accident. And her family called us right after the services for her funeral, and they said, is there any way you can open back up the fundraising campaign? We have people that want to give to that. And so people started giving, friends and family and acquaintances and strangers, and people started learning about it, and local news picked it up, and the national news picked it up, and Scott and Rachel's mom ended up on the Today Show talking about Rachel's desire to raise money for clean water, and at the end of all that, she raised $1.3 million for clean water. The power of telling those stories. We've always believed in the power of proof, storytelling, and innovation. So we started talking a couple of years ago, and I'll land for the last few minutes we have, on what we're doing today with creativity and innovation. And we started talking about what would it look like to create an immersive water space where people put their phones down, closed their computers, and came into a literal physical space to go through the story of the water crisis. What would that look like? How could we create that? So we started working on that, and now this innovation is called the Experience Lab, and it is located just south of Nashville, Tennessee. We built it in a multi-use retail space where 50,000 people come through that space to shop and to eat and to get ice cream and do other things, and then they see our space upstairs. It's an immersive space aimed at telling the global water crisis. Check out our ad just to give you a little bit of an idea of what we're trying to accomplish at the Experience Lab. While the lab looks a lot like a museum or an adventure science center, we designed it to be a 60-minute guided tour that walks you through what it looks like to go through the water crisis. So it looks like a museum, but it's all guided tour to show you the problem, the solution, and how you can act upon that. So I'm going to walk you through we have 10 different spots as you go through the lab, 10 different stops on the tour. I'm going to give you 3 really quick examples of how we're utilizing this. So the first is when you walk through the front door, you encounter these life-size holographic boxes. And they have the family that the lab story is built around, Lakiso and her 2 daughters. And so people come in and spend time engaging with this family and learning more about them. And you have to remember, we're in this multi-use retail space, and so people who show up there to grab ice cream with their kids somehow make their way up the stairs to engage with this. It's a little bit of a billboard, draws them in. They go from interested to tour to donor because they were engaged by technology and by creativity and by innovation. So the first thing you do is engage with these holographic boxes. You then go through our theater where you watch a film about the water crisis. And after that, we want you to engage with that idea that 200 million hours are spent every day walking for dirty water. So we walk you into our water walk room. In this room, it is a 180-degree video wall, and you walk in, it's 95 degrees in the room to match what it feels like in Uganda. We pipe in smells of dirt and of grass so that you walk out of your comfortable life and into this life, and you walk on a built-in treadmill with Esther, who's 14 years old, and you follow her from her dirty water source towards her home. So for just a moment, you leave your life and enter in to what it feels like for them. After you do that, you go through a few different stations, and you end up at virtual reality. And you slide on the goggles, and you meet Esther's 10-year-old sister, Grace. And Grace is going to walk you through the day that clean water came into their life. And when you slide the goggles in, you enter into their village. And so with their story, with Grace as your narrator, you see what it's like for them without clean water. And then you get to stand there as the drilling rig shows up and drills for clean water. And you are standing in the midst of them as they celebrate and as they dance and as they are overjoyed by water showing up in their community. You leave your life and into their life. Let me stop for a moment and just remind us, people long for stories. You have a story. Keep sharing it to a few people or a lot of people. People need stories. We need way more storytellers in our society than we need commentators. And right now it feels like that's flipped. So be a storyteller. The idea of the entire Experience Lab is around narrative transportation. We are pulling somebody out of their life, immersing them in such a deep story that they want to do something about it. If you have ever cheered at a movie theater or cried when reading a book, you know what narrative transportation truly is. It's just the immersion into a great story. And we're seeing that on a daily basis at the Experience Lab. We're seeing families that come through and they give together for the very first time as a family. We're seeing school groups on field trips come in and spend an hour with us, and kids realizing that they don't have to wait until they're an adult to be a world changer. Creativity and innovation are moving people along to do something about this world. And then there's Peyton. Peyton is an 11-year-old boy just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and he and his family came through the Experience Lab on our preview tour months before we were officially open, and they went through the lab, and at the end of the lab, we end up at the gift shop where we invite people to give and to join us in stopping the water crisis. So Peyton and his family took a 3D printed jerry can, those yellow cans in the picture, that's what people carry water in. We have 3D printed piggy banks in the shape of jerry cans that kids take, fill up, bring back. Great way to get kids involved. And so Peyton takes one of these, and what we did not know at the time is that the family went down to eat lunch after they were done in the Experience Lab. And at lunch, Peyton turned to his family, and he said, I don't want to just do the jerry can piggy bank. I want to raise the $10,000 that's needed to bring clean water to an entire community. And his parents, in all their wisdom, they could have said, choose something more reasonable, something you can actually accomplish. But these parents, in their wisdom, just said, what's your plan? And he said, I'm going to ask anybody I can find. So he started with his grandparents, which is where every kid should start when they're raising money. Started with his grandparents, moved on door to door in his neighborhood, went to his church and asked if he could speak to any class that would let him. We tell this story on every tour, and I told it one day, and an 85-year-old man stopped me after the tour, and he said, that boy came to my Sunday school class, and I gave him $30. So an 85-year-old man and an 11-year-old boy fighting for clean water. And so Peyton just asked everybody that he can find. For 4 months it took him, the persistence of this kid, for 4 months trying to find people to help him accomplish what he wanted to accomplish for this community that needed clean water. And so we find out about the story and invite Peyton and his family to our grand opening when we opened the lab last March. And so what we did is Scott jumped up on our front desk like you see there and invited Peyton up, tells that story that I just told you. And Peyton was ready for the moment. You can tell, front tuck shirt, jacket, hair doing the thing, like he was ready for his moment. So Scott tells the story and then turns to Peyton and said, do you have something for me? And he pulls out of his back pocket an envelope with $10,000 in cash and checks and turns it in. And so he jumps off of there as people are celebrating, and we celebrate every donation at the Experience Lab because we want everything to be a physical manifestation of what we're doing. So he grabs the drill to represent drilling for water, and he drills into our Experience Lab gift shop into Uganda, and he drills in there, and we put a dot over it. Takes about a year from funding to completion of a water project, so we're days away from getting the full impact report that'll tell Peyton what he has truly done in a community in Uganda that will now have clean water because one 11-year-old boy thought, I can do something about this. Now that community will have clean water for multiple decades. That's the power of creativity and beauty and innovation. That's what happens when we decide that we're going to put it into the world and do something with it. What has it done for us? In 1 year, we've toured more than 10,000 people through the Experience Lab. And if you're ever in the Nashville area, come and find me. I will give you a private tour of that space. But 10,000 people in the last year, and we've raised $3.5 million for clean water by utilizing creativity as the driving force. That is the power of what we do. So let me encourage you as we finish. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are, keep moving forward with creativity. Put it into the world. Tell your story. Because when you do, when you decide that beauty is going to be first, when you decide I'm going to be creative and I'm going to pursue innovation, the world becomes a better place because you are doing that. So keep going, stay the course. Thank you very much.